long-range radar surveillance aircraft. No country in the world has lost such high-tech planes. The Russian Air Force lost 2 such aircraft within 40 days. On the evening of February 23rd, on the second anniversary of the Russian troops' full-scale invasion of Ukraine, residents of one of Russia's southern regions observed an aircraft deploying flares amidst the night sky. Russian pilots desperately tried to evade missiles by using infrared countermeasures. One missile missed, hitting a false fire target, but the second missile struck the aircraft. An explosion followed, sending a huge fireball plummeting to the ground, igniting a massive fire upon impact.
По соседству рядом. Тут пипец. Был большой взрыв и горит очень сильно, страшно.
Вот трудовая Армения горит, все, самолет упал или что-то, и там еще что-то взрывается, короче. Вот у нас еще за дорогой тоже упало, еще один.
Soon, videos of the wreckage from the crash site emerged. It is understood that the footage was taken by security services, but leaks within Russian power structures are common, so the footage made its way online, allowing us to see firsthand that nothing was left of the aircraft. That same evening, Ukrainian military intelligence announced that its forces had shot down Moscow's most valuable asset, the A-50, or Mainstay, according to NATO classification. 3 days later, satellite photos of the crash site appeared. For the aggressor country, this aircraft performs the same tasks as any other airborne radar. It identifies targets in ground, sea, and airspace up to 500 kilometers away, providing targeting information for its own aviation and air defense. This platform is of strategic aviation class. It serves as the eyes and ears of the Air Force, Navy, and Army. Without eyes, there are no possibilities to conduct modern warfare. This is why the United States has produced nearly 70 units of the Boeing E-3 Sentry AWACS class since the 70s and currently operates 31 such aircraft. Russia has significantly fewer of them, and their capabilities, though classified, may be inferior to those of the Americans. It is believed that the production cost of the Mainstay reaches up to $500 million, and that under sanctions, its production is virtually impossible. Training crews for each of these aircraft is no less challenging, and with the 2 Mainstays, a total of more than 20 officers were killed, which became a real tragedy for the Russian Air Force. In Kiev, it was stated that after the Ukrainians eliminated one Mainstay in January and another in February, Russia had only 6 A-50s left. It's understood that only half of them, those that have undergone modernization and bear the letter U in their name, can perform full-scale modern missions. This is because the A-50, like much of the Russian military, is merely a Soviet original that has become dramatically outdated from a technological standpoint. The one shot down on February 23rd was precisely such a modification, the A-50U. According to open sources, the Russian regime now has only 3 A-50U units left. We must agree with the head of Ukrainian military intelligence, Kirilo Budanov, who stated that if Moscow loses even one more Mainstay, it would spell the end for its ability to maintain round-the-clock surveillance through airborne radar stations. Nevertheless, according to the Ukrainians, the Russians have already suspended all Mainstay flights. This is not surprising. The problem for the Russians is that they still cannot answer 2 questions. What is the maximum operating distance of Ukrainian air defense? And what specific weapons are they using for this? For the Russian General Staff, the shock must have come from what the Ukrainian Special Operations Forces have accomplished in the last 5 weeks. On January 14th, Ukrainians downed a Mainstay and disabled a Type 10 airborne command post 80 miles or 130 kilometers from the front line. Then, from February 18 to 27, 9 Russian tactical bombers and fullback and flanker E-plus fighters were reported destroyed more than 40 miles or 70 kilometers from the front line. Now, at the end of February, Ukrainian defense forces have for the first time hit an enemy aircraft at a distance of 140 miles or 230 kilometers from the front line, directly over Russian territory, across the sea from the Ukrainian border. In the last case, it was too far even for Patriot systems, whose range against aircraft is no more than 100 miles, that is, 160 kilometers. The main Directorate of Intelligence of Ukraine announced that on February 23rd, they used the S-200 system, or SA-5 Gammon according to NATO classification. This claim could only be believed if one is unaware that the Gammon is an old Soviet design from the 1960s. Even its modifications, which are supposedly capable of reaching a maximum range of 250 kilometers, would hardly be able to handle such a challenging target as the Mainstay at such a great distance. Firstly, the Gammon would have to operate at the limits of its capabilities, as it would have to fire from a distance of 30 kilometers from the front line. Secondly, according to sources, the effectiveness of the Gammon is extremely low. In Libya, this figure did not exceed 10%, and in Syria, it was even less. Thirdly, hitting a target at a distance of 250 kilometers requires a well-functioning radar, but the radar is the most vulnerable point in Russian Soviet design systems. Fourthly, it's hard to believe that old Soviet-made systems could be superior to modern American systems of a comparable class in terms of range and other parameters. Fifthly, if we go by open information, the Gammon missile system has a radar guidance system, but we see that one of the missiles hits a flare, which means that on the terminal phase, this missile used an infrared guidance method. This does not mean that it was not a Gammon, but it does mean that there's a significant likelihood of an alternative. An alternative according to which the Mainstay was hit by an air-to-air missile, because such missiles typically use infrared guidance systems. It's difficult to understand how this is possible. No NATO country has air-to-air missiles capable of operating from distances over 200 kilometers. Moreover, officially, Ukraine does not have any Western fighter jets. In short, we're at an impasse. The Russians seem to be as well. The Ukrainians are celebrating. Most likely, they are misleading the enemy by claiming the Gammon as the only possible but improbable option to conceal their real trump card. Moscow should be concerned about what this trump card is, capable of systematically taking out its aviation, which remains the Russians' main advantage over the Ukrainians. Even worse for Russia is the fact that its mainstays are unable to fulfill the task for which they were created, namely, they cannot protect not only their own troops, but also themselves from missile strikes. The defeat of an AWACS aircraft by a missile would be nonsensical. These aircraft are equipped with electronic warfare capabilities that significantly hinder their defeat. No American E-3 has ever been shot down in the air. On the contrary, this is the second such disaster for the Russians in 2 months. Once could be considered a fluke, but twice suggests a pattern. Prominent Russian military bloggers have attributed the loss of the A-50s to friendly fire both times, but there is almost no doubt that this is a bluff. If they were telling the truth, we would see resignations in the Russian high command and investigations. What do we actually see? First, the Russian Ministry of Defense and all other official agencies remained silent both about the loss of the Mainstay and about the loss of half a dozen tactical bombers within a week. Second, after one of the Mainstays was destroyed in January, these aircraft preferred to patrol farther away from Ukraine. This would not have happened if the Russian command believed the friendly fire version to be true. Now, as we can see, there are no longer safe zones for Mainstays even far from the Ukrainian borders. However, the problem for the Russians is broader than the issue of 2 downed Mainstays. The Ukrainians are actively destroying not only Russian aviation, but also the Russian fleet. In the last month, they have eliminated 2 military ships with their naval drones. Following the loss of 14 major vessels, the Russian Black Sea Fleet has ceased to function as a combat-capable force. The Russians are being decimated in the air and at sea. On land, they remain strong, but only due to their numbers and a tolerable attitude towards their own massive losses. It seems the Ukrainian forces still have many strategic surprises in store for the Russians. However, for the Ukrainian army to secure victory, there is an acute shortage of weapons and ammunition. If the West continues to delay their supplies, Ukraine risks losing new territories. The Ukrainians are fighting valiantly, but how can a lion fight if its paws are tied?
Самолет били летить, он падає.
О, попали. Прикинь, а куда он упадет?